as I was shooting that interview, I literally I felt like I was stepping outside my body a little bit. I remember at one point I was going to say, hey, can we just pause? Because I'm tripping balls right now.
Today on the show, we are joined with director Jeff Finn. Jeff has spent well over a decade putting together his latest docuseries, which he calls a docu-mystery, titled Before the End, Searching for Jim Morrison. And oh my god, this 3-episode series absolutely blew me away, as Jeff takes a huge deep dive into the life of Jim Morrison and questions a lot of the mysterious events around his death. One thing I absolutely loved about this documentary was the interviews that were so raw, real, and candid of people who were actually in Jim's life, from high school friends, girlfriends, roadies, etc., etc., and around. Hearing all these amazing stories, this journey takes Jeff on an incredible ride and a deeper dive that leads him into working with private investigators, forensic people, and much more. Also, around this interview, we were sent a package from our new friends at Magic Mind, who provide this all-natural, safe-to-use cognitive enhancing shot that actually made me feel like I was firing on all cylinders. And during this interview, we had this moment.
Man, and what's amazing is in the doc, as you may recall, I'm just making a note here, you've got me inspired.
Oh, awesome. Yes.
Great interview.
I'm definitely going to be taking a shot of Magic Mind before each and every one of my interviews. And if you're also looking for an all-natural way to enhance your mental performance, lower stress, having a wave of calm energy, and just boosting your vitality with a ton of vitamins, you can check out Magic Mind on their website, magicmind.com. And also for the whole month of January, get 45% off a case of these shots by typing in magicmind.com/creative imbalance, JAN, short for January. Again, magicmind.com/creative imbalance, Jan. I'm going to take another shot, listen to this back, and edit the rest of this episode. Hope you enjoy this talk with Jeff Finn.
Oh, it was, just an amazing roller coaster.
Yeah.
Adventure, a journey. It was like a vision quest, personally, and it was a real honor, to bring these people who had only been names in books, many of them by and large. I connected with over 1,000 people who were connected to Jim in whatever way, then that's whether they just, knew him for 20 minutes one day in 1968, or, they were intimate lovers, all points in between. And, some of them had been interviewed on camera over the years here and there, but by and large, most of them had not. And so I said, as I said, it was a real honor to bring them out of the shadows and into the light, and let the fans see them and hear them and get to know them a little bit and hear their truth, their real truth about Jim as a person, and not just a persona.
Yeah, definitely. And it just felt like just so real, raw, candid. So many words I can say for just how I felt watching it as well. And you, as a lifelong Jim Morrison fan, is there any really big thing that stuck out that somebody said to you that you're like, holy shit, I did not know this, or just maybe a personal trait of his and everything?
Oh my God. How much time do you have?
40 minutes, apparently.
Yeah, it was just mind bomb after mind bomb after mind bomb. Just well, obviously you've seen the docu-mystery, as I call it.
Mm-hmm.
Just meeting Robin Wardle, the mysterious, enigmatic Robin Wardle. She was Jim's personal assistant, what we now would call a personal assistant. She was his assistant in Paris, the brief time that he was in Paris. And she essentially was hired under the guise of, doing translations, because she spoke fluent French. administrative tasks, like office work and ordering furniture, these kinds of things. But after I finally found her, and I first tried to find her in 1996, it took me literally 20 years to find this woman because her name had been misspelled in all biographies.
Oh shit.
This one, you
Is it
know.
like a different spelling every time you like see it type of thing?
I mean, no. Well, they misspelled both her first and last name.
Oh shit.
Not alive, and I don't know if that was by choice or not. I never got the answer
Mm.
to that. But that obviously was then reflected in every other biography because they drew upon "No One Here Gets Out Alive" as the original blueprint. So, at the risk of spoilers, her information was staggering. It's still staggering. I mean, I think what at one point I said to her, she said, "You're so very close now, Jeff." And I said, "To what? Finishing my documentary or to proving Jim faked his death?" And she went, "I have to go now. Goodbye." Click.
Oh,
So we
that
went,
gives me the chills. Like, that's
yeah, like these
crazy.
cliffhangers, it gives me goosebumps right now
Yeah. Oh, damn.
on the back of my neck, my hair raising up. It was incredible. And I said at one point, I got real with her, I go, you know what I think happened? I think I came along after nearly 50 years and helped you remove this. I called it her albatross necklace. I think I helped you
Mm.
loosen that albatross necklace just enough to help you breathe and get something off your chest. And then you clamped it down again. And she goes, "You're very perceptive." And then once again, she goes, "I have to go." Click.
Oh
So,
my God.
I mean,
Yeah.
I joked with friends that I could have made a doc just about my interactions with Robin Wordle alone. It was fucking fascinating.
Yeah.
Yeah,
That's
amazing.
wild. I felt like there's so many like moments you captured in this film too, where I know you've cut these interviews and everything, but just as you said, like you could put like your whole conversation up with her and that would be a podcast. Or your one of my favorite things was when you were actually in Jim's childhood basement with all his like high school buddies and they were just candidly shooting the shit, and I just loved that so much, how candid it was, and just even it felt like me as like a casual Doors fan, like getting to know Jim even more as a human, like was amazing. Like it was crazy.
Oh, dude, you have no idea. When I shot that, I'm getting the goosebumps again. When I
Yeah.
when I shot that interview with those four guys who went to high school with him in
Yeah.
Alexandria, Virginia, we shot that in the basement of the former Morrison home in Alexandria, where Jim had his own basement bedroom with its own separate entrance. And I would look at the door. He had a door that exited to the outside, and I often wondered, was that door one of the inspirations,
Yeah.
along with obviously Aldous Huxley and that kind of thing. But as I was shooting that interview, I literally I felt like I was stepping outside my body a little bit. I remember at one point I was going to say, "Hey, can we just pause? Because I'm tripping balls right now." I mean, it was so fun, just as a fan. It was so fun, so just cool to hear
Yeah.
these guys reminisce. It was just a beautiful thing, and I was really grateful to be able to be a part of that and bring it to the fans, Jim's fans.
Yeah, definitely. And I'm sure like you still have like all this raw footage too. If you ever wanted to release that as a podcast on the side, or like if you got the DVD, like bonus features and stuff, that's like amazing stuff. Cause I'm sure there's just too much that you couldn't even put into the doc. Cause
Oh,
you also have
100%.
this ongoing narrative as well, which man, like I don't even know how to get into this. This turns into like the craziest true crime story that you're capturing in like real time and discovering things. And even I kind of want to know a little bit of your thoughts like at the beginning of this journey and having like I don't know these suspicions around Jim's death and almost like what made you feel like I need to make this film? Was there
Uh,
like a moment or was this just
Dude, it was just, it was. I never could have anticipated it. You know what I mean? It was such an organic process for me. Um, it just, and it went in phases, as they always do. I mean, I've joked about this. There's an Easter egg in the doc where you see a little photo of me as a 2-year-old kid sitting in a black leather chair holding my Siamese cat named Lucifer.
It's pretty badass.
and and I'll never forget that night because I just turned 2 years old, and I remember I was allowed to stay up late because it was a Saturday night, and my mom took the photo of me, and then on the back of that photo, black and white photo, it's like an old Polaroid. She in her handwriting, you see 3/1/1969, and it wasn't until years later that I put it together. Like, holy shit, that's my first conscious memory, and it was taken on the night. So while Jim was down in Miami holding that lamb on stage, I was up in Chicago holding my cat. And I know that it ends there. There are no mystical implications or anything. It's just a fun thing to realize that's my first conscious memory. And I've seen other photos of me that were taken after that, and I don't remember them for shit.
Yeah, yeah.
And that night is emblazoned in my mind. And so I joke, that Jim was with me from the jump.
Oh, that's super cool. And yeah, yeah, I'm sure it's like that's a hard question to answer too, because obviously you embedded your whole life into, I don't know, just like having this in the back of your mind. And I think what's so cool is like as you're recording this piece, you turn into quite the detective on the way. And like, I don't know if you want to make more films or if you want to go down the road of or the route of like becoming like solving cases and shit like that, but it
I
seems like you
appreciate
got a
that.
bit of a knack for both.
Yeah, I did. I consulted with private investigators, DNA analysts, forensic fingerprint experts, former FBI. I mean, I went for it.
Yeah.
And a couple of one was one of the first detectives I worked with, not Cheryl, the one who eventually worked with me in the cut, um, but this old grizzled guy. He was like right out of Central Casting. He had a grizzled voice like this, and he was like, "You're pretty good at this shit, Finn. You
He's
ever
like
think
a
about?"
cartoon detective
Yeah.
type thing.
He was like, "You ever think about doing it as a career?" And I was like, "Well, wow, it was a real compliment."
Yeah.
I'm too busy with this as my life's work, but thank you. So, but yeah, as a little kid, I loved Sherlock Holmes. I used to even love watching the Rockford Files. That shows how old I am. I'm
Mhm.
57. It was a TV show with James Garner where he played a private investigator in Los Angeles.
Yeah, yeah, so cool. And yeah, I'm not trying to spoil so much of like kind of the this ongoing narrative of what you unveil throughout these 3 episodes, but even like the beginning seeds, it almost makes you think like you had to become a detective. How do you not dig deeper after getting these just bizarre little sprinkles of clues everywhere? Like you can't walk away from that. You got to go full force into that.
Oh man, once the hook's in your mouth, that's
Yeah.
deep. And I mean, it was just, again, first and foremost, I always tell people, I remind them, I'm a fan.
Mhm.
I'm a Morrison fan.
Yeah.
I'm a Doors fan too, of course, but by and large, I'm a Jim Morrison fan. And I always say this doc is about Jim Morrison. It's not a rock doc. It's
Hmm.
not a Doors doc. They're a part of the story, of course, but akin to the doc Soaked in Bleach about Kurt Cobain, which is brilliant, by the way. I recommend it. Ben Statler, the guy who directed that, it was about Kurt. It wasn't about Nirvana. In fact,
Hmm.
there was not a Nirvana song to be heard in that doc. It was like a true crime doc about Cobain, and
Yeah.
it was a true crime docu-mystery, as I say, about Jim Morrison.
Yeah, super cool. And yeah, again, like I think throughout my life I've been just a casual Doors fan. Like I know like the hits and stuff like this. And I'm not gonna lie, like after watching this series, you caused me to do a deep dive because I honestly like even if I feel like people can watch this, and if they, whether they believe Jim's alive or dead, they're still gonna get so much info about how interesting Jim is as just a fucking human. And just like the past couple days, I've been just kind of spinning the Doors discography around the house too, and getting a brand new appreciation for Jim.
That's awesome. That means a lot, and I hope to do that. Obviously, there's the old fans who've been there since the '60s. There are the people from the middle period, like me, and then there's even the young fans, like I call the TikTok generation, or Gen Z. I know I was so inspired by the way people on TikTok have, of all people, the Menendez brothers.
Oh,
They've gone
really?
rabbit hole of the Menendez brothers, and they're drilling down deep into uh, the true motivations behind the horrific murder of their parents, which entails sexual abuse that was largely swept under the rug. And so this younger generation has this empathy, as I see it, and I hope that that same generation can plug into Jim via empathy, and really try to understand his trauma and the toxicity he endured, which shaped him, and that's why his formative years are so important to study. He lived for 21 years before the Doors formed, and those 21 years are usually glossed over in a rush to get to the sex, drugs, and rock and roll, of the Doors, and that's a shame, So
Yeah.
that was a huge undertaking in and of itself, just diving into his formative development.
Yeah, definitely. And I feel like just again, from my perspective as a casual listener of somebody who just hears the hits on the radio, and my dad used to play like a couple of the records when I was younger too. A lot of that isn't just widely known with everybody who hears a Doors song, and it's so cool that you're kind of, I don't know, putting more context to who he is as a human being throughout this other narrative you got going on and everything. Like it's just such a cool piece, man. And yeah, you should be really proud of how you put it together.
Yeah, I mean, again, stepping outside of my, taking off my director's cap, if you will. I mean, I thrill to it just as a fan.
Mhm.
I get objective and I stand back and I watch the docu-mystery and I'm like, God damn it, there's so much to this guy, and it's just a real shame that people haven't known that for all these decades. And then even further, more distinctly, they've I've said it many times on the record, the mainstream media and the masses unfortunately took the controlled narrative from the jump.
Mhm.
And when Bill Hicks came, or Bill Hicks, excuse me, when Bill Siddons, the Doors' original manager, came back from Paris in 1971, he released a public relations statement, press release, that stated the coffin was sealed. That's all he knew. That's all he saw. He never saw the body, and Jim was dead. And that was like end of story.
Yeah.
And unfortunately, everyone took that at face value, or most people did, and that narrative is still in place to this day.
Mhm.
And I get people coming up to me and being like, "Who the hell are you to question?" And I was like, "Who the hell aren't we? We're the fans, man. We
Yeah,
have
yeah.
to question what really happened."
Yeah.
And
Especially since there's no information.
yeah, so it's
Yeah.
like I'm just asking. I've said this so many times. I quote Jim when he said, "Wake up," like wake the fuck up. Just don't take the carrot that's dangled in front of you. Just knock it away and do your own research, do your own thinking, come to your own conclusions. Don't be lazy and complacent. Jim wasn't that way. He was always striving for a deeper understanding of everything. Life itself, death,
Yeah.
all of it. So it's like
Hmm.
a tribute to Jim to question authority, question everything.
Yeah, definitely too. And even I feel like if somebody prior to turning on this doc, maybe their mindset is just like, yo, this is full of shit. He's definitely dead or whatever. If they take the time to watch this, there's going to be moments where they're just like, that's pretty strange. And especially like one thing that stood out to me is like how you talk to so many people from his personal life, and they were hearing Jim talk about wanting to pretty much fake his death and start anew and just not be seen. And he never
Yes.
wanted this fame. And like even them growing up, they couldn't imagine him having this fame. And just like even just so much documentation of him being like pretty much saying like he wants to fake his death and
Oh,
disappear.
it's amazing, man. You can't make this stuff up. It's like, they say the truth is stranger than fiction, right?
Yeah.
Um, that's an old adage, and it holds true to this day. I mean, this is a guy, and this is on the books, on the record, going back years. And I didn't discover this, by the way. Credit goes to a guy named Mark Obsosnik, who wrote a book called "The Lizard King Was Here," which is about Jim's time in Alexandria, Virginia, up until he graduated high school, which was a vital period in his development. And Obsosnik, years ago, and I interviewed him for Before the End, by the way. I hope it'll come out in a future director's cut, because it was a brilliant interview. I just couldn't fit it all in. Um, but Mark found two guys who went to high school with Jim, and two of them are the ones of the four down in the basement interview you mentioned,
Mm.
Bill Thomas and Randy Maney. And I guess the other two, David Katz and Jim Merrill, also had the same information back then. But long story somewhat short, Jim told these guys around 1961, his senior year of high school, that one day he would disappear and lead a different life. And as Bill Thomas says in the doc, he said he looked at Jim and he was like, whatever, Morrison, you're weird. Like
Yeah.
these are 17-year-old, 18-year-old guys, and they didn't think anything of it. And then 10 years later, when they heard Jim died, I think Bill called Randy and he said, "Did you hear about Jim?" And he goes, "Yeah." He goes, "Do you believe it?" And he goes, "Not for a minute."
Yeah,
And
it's wild.
they remembered that conversation 10 years earlier. So I don't think Jim had it distinctly mapped out. How could he at age 17, that he was, as I say, going to have a 10-year plan to fake his death.
Yeah.
And I'm sure he didn't anticipate the doors when he was 17, but who knows? But at any rate, he was discussing this openly 10 years before he allegedly died. You
Yeah.
can't,
Yeah, basically whether he's dead right now or not, he was inspired to fake his death. And
yes, he had every motive, man. I mean, he was sick and tired of the doors, fame, Los Angeles, Hollywood, paternity suits hanging over his head. He was just burned out, and he was maturing. He was saying 27's too old to be a rock star. Um,
wow.
he wanted out really early on in the process, honestly. And most people don't know that. And it's sad, but true. But he was a stand up dude and he hung in there. He had signed the contract and he saw that contract through to the very end, no pun intended, until 71. But the minute it was done, the minute LA Woman, the final album came out, he was gone. He was gone before they even finished mixing it. He blew out.
It's like it's over.
Does a lot.
Wow, wow. Yeah, I can't say enough how I love that little friend group they had too. Again, like even like the little stories they tell, it just kind of reminded me of being in high school with my buddies too, and we're all like little quirky characters and everything. It's just
Talk
kind of
about the
shit.
four guys, the Fab Four in the basement.
Yeah, yeah. And I thought one thing too that also made me a bigger fan of Jim Morrison and just him as an artist was all his friends don't recall him ever like really pursuing music, but he was reading all this poetry. And
Yeah,
I never knew this about Jim Morrison, where it's just like he was a poet first, a wordsmith first, and then he figured out the singing like later on and everything. I'm like, that's so badass. And even when I go like listen to like the hits I know too, I'm like, oh yeah, like these lines are like really like punchy and like solid and like make you like your brain tingle a bit too and everything. So it's I don't know, that's just something I appreciated and made me even a
oh
bigger fan of him.
man, and what's amazing is in the doc, as you may recall, I'm just making a note here.
Yeah.
You've got me inspired.
Oh, awesome. Yes.
Great interview.
Oh, thank you.
In my documentary, there's a lady. She was wonderful, and she was a visual artist, and she sadly just passed in the last few months, and
Oh,
it hits me because
yeah. Rest in peace.
yeah, her name was Bonnie Randall Bowler, and her son contacted me and let me know she passed and that she had been waiting to see before the end, and that's just a heartbreaker. But
Oh, condolences to you.
yeah, I've lost a number of the interviewees because these are people all up there in years, and the timing was right, and I was so grateful to catch them while they were still with us,
Hmm.
to share their stories. And Bonnie went to Alameda High School in Alameda, California, with Jim, and she relates this amazing story that fills in a number of puzzle pieces, where she basically details how Jim I'll say it tactfully, was taking steps towards being in a context of a rock band in 1958, uh,
Mm,
758, almost 10 years before the Doors exploded in terms of their fame in 19.
interesting.
So the general narrative all these years has been, oh, Jim, he was a poet and a writer and da da da. And he didn't pick up a microphone until 1965 when the Doors formed. And it's like, oh no, we go back 8 years before that, almost 8 years before that, the Doors formation, when he was making moves, almost like rock star moves in Alameda, California. So I don't want to give any full spoilers, but it's in the doc.
Cool, cool. Yeah, yeah. It's almost like he was doing like all these different side quests without telling his friends, you know? Just kind of, I guess, like in the video game world, they call it like gaining XP, you know, like going on all these little adventures and making your character stronger. But like a lot of his group of friends are just like, oh, music, that's random. Like, why are you doing that? But
Blew their minds. I mean,
yeah.
I'm telling you, this is a guy who is acutely, keenly aware of mystery and the importance of mystery and what to leave in, what to leave out. He was so conscious of that. I love, there's a quote in "No One Here Gets Out Alive" from Bobby Newworth, who was one of Bob Dylan's close friends, who was later hired to be a babysitter for Jim during the Doors era. And he says, the cat was hip to every move that was being made. And he talks about how Morrison was always like 3 steps ahead of everyone and everything at all times. So he was absolutely savvy. There's this depiction of him from Oliver Stone, that he was just this drunken narcissist wastoid, and it's a real shame. There was so much more to Jim. I think Stone's a great filmmaker, but I don't think The Doors was a great offering. It was nothing like his JFK or Natural Born Killers. And that's, again, that was his right as a filmmaker to present his vision. But I've done a lot of damage control from that film. I've met so many people who are like, Morrison, he was a fucking asshole, and I'd be like,
Yeah.
where did you learn that? And they would invariably say, well, I saw the Oliver Stone movie, and I'd be like,
Mm,
no, no, so
yeah.
yeah, he was a brilliant, he was an absolute intellectual. And in fact, one of his high school friends who was not in the basement, but who is in the doc, and he recently passed. So shout out to John Hutter, wonderful guy, who was a close friend of Jim's in high school in Virginia. And he said to me, sitting down with me, off the record, it was a fun moment, and now he's gone, so I can relate that. And he said, um, I know Jim was good looking, and I know he had a good voice, and he was a good writer and all that stuff, what you need to be a rock star, but why him? Why not me? I was sitting there in Hutter's living room.
Yeah, he's just like just
Yeah.
bitter.
And I,
Like,
really asking me, or is that a rhetorical question?
yeah.
He goes, no, I really want to know, why Jim Morrison? Like, why did he become Jim Morrison? And we both sat there, and we're in his living room, and I'm like, well, and then it just came to me, and I go, put it this way. And I remember I said, if Elvis was the groin and Bob Dylan was the brain, then Jim Morrison was the grain. Get it?
Mm.
And we both sat there, and Hunter goes, I get it now. Yeah, it makes sense. And we off, But I was like, hey, that was pretty good.
Yeah, that's awesome.
I send it up there.
Yeah, it's so cool. And yeah, even like you mentioned how he's like always kind of like 3 steps ahead. Um I think that's just so cool like how all his friends have all these stories of him just doing like random shit to get like a reaction out of him. And even I
Oh,
was thinking like as like I was watching the film too, I'm like, yo, if Jim's still alive, he's the type of guy who's just gonna show up on TikTok one day doing a dance, like 50 plus years later. Like,
dude, you nailed it right there, and that's interesting because most people don't really perceive that. You have to sort of hit him over the head with it. He
mhm.
was. I mean, I've literally said, and I elaborate on this in my forthcoming book, 127 Fascination. Um, he was like a rock and roll sociologist.
Mhm.
And that's not an exaggeration. In fact, in one of his interviews for Rolling Stone back in the day, he literally told Jerry Hopkins, who later wrote No One Here Gets Out Alive, the first biography of Jim. Um, he told Hopkins that at one point he had planned to study sociology in
Wow.
college. So he was like, I mean, the guy was taking field notes all along. Like he would literally have his spiral notebook in his pen and would be taking notes on the actions of his brother and sister, his college roommates, his girlfriends, his friends in
Just on
general.
his free time for his own like
Yes,
amusement type of thing.
I'm telling you, I think he had it all. I think he had a rough plan that slowly coalesced over time into what we know. And I think he had that fake death in mind all along while riffing on Arthur Rimbaud, the French poet, who was one of Morrison's you know true inspirations. And in real life, almost 100 years before Jim, Rimbaud, who had become a famous poet by the time he was 20. He literally gave up his life of poetry at 20, some say even 19, and completely did a 180 and basically vanished into Africa and took up a whole new life as a coffee trader.
Mm.
I think
Wow.
that made a huge impact
Again,
on Jim.
yeah, another seed there too. And
Yes.
yeah, it's just so fascinating. And again, like I can't say enough like growing up again just as the casual listener, I'll hear a song like Riders on the Storm. I'm like, this guy's fucking serious. And then I hear all these stories from his friends. It's like the total polar opposite of like my image or who I thought Jim Morrison was just from his music, It's so cool to kind
Oh
of
man,
break it
the
down.
guy hit on all cylinders. As I always say, he was like a black diamond, and depending on the time of day and where the sun was, you would see a different facet glinting, and you'd get a different version of Jim. He's often thought of as this morose, depressed, serious, grim, you
Yeah.
know,
I thought that.
and that was him. That's
Yeah.
certainly one of those facets, and it was a major facet because he was so introspective, and I even argue introverted, that he would go in deep and ask those huge existential questions. What is life? What is death? What the hell are we doing here? What is this planet? How is it here? Why is it here? But then there was the flip side of him. There was the guy with the dark stealth. I call it the stealth sense of humor. Pitch black humor. And this is a guy who, at the end of the song "Touch Me," when the song goes, it ends with a dun 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 dun. And at the time, there was a TV commercial in the late 60s for Ajax cleanser soap, whatever. And their tagline was stronger than dirt. So Jim literally sings stronger than dirt. And they put it in there as an Easter egg where it's just audible enough. So that shows his humor right there. And there are many instances of his humor in concert, in his personal life. He was a truly multifaceted individual. He was not the one dimensional person you see in Oliver Stone's biopic, you know.
Yeah, for sure. And I feel like even hearing about a lot of like this lighter side of him and fun side too, it's strangely like inspiring me in different ways or whatever. But I'm not going to go down that road because we got a little bit time left with you. But another thing I just kind of wanted to ask, just because I notice a lot of like different creatives themselves will listen to these segments I do and even like send me messages that they got something out of the interview or like whoever. And maybe do you have any like general advice for somebody who's trying to start making a documentary or anything like that?
Oh, yeah, I've been asked that a few times, and I joke and say I'm probably the last person to give any advice.
We're all our own worst critic too. Like I just watched this docu-series. I'm like, this is amazing. And you're like, I don't know anything.
No, I mean, honestly, I took, for lack of a better term, I took the punk rock approach. I just
Yeah.
dove in and did it. Um, I wanted to study. It's ironic because back after I read No One Here Gets Out Alive in the 80s at the age of 18, I'm going to be 58 in February. So I've been around and then some. Uh, I was fascinated by documentary films back then. I had seen one about Marilyn Monroe and the Kennedys, which left a real impression on me. And then a few years later, I saw Errol Morris's The Thin Blue Line. And then all these decades later, Errol Morris struck again with Wormwood. I highly recommend that doc. It's amazing
Cool.
and so inspirational. And that deals with MK Ultra and the CIA, like real shit that they've proven, not tinfoil hat bullshit. Um, but yeah, I wanted to study documentary film. I looked into studying at Columbia College in Chicago, and for whatever reason, it didn't happen. And it took me all these years to kind of come full circle, as it were. But when I did, I made this tiny UFO doc called Strange Septembers: The Hill Abduction and the Exeter Encounter.
Oh,
And
cool.
it was just a fun hobby more than anything. And I was just going to throw it up on YouTube. It was never meant for professional consumption. I mean,
Yeah.
the audio was shot on internal audio flip cams, for God's sake. But a production company came along and said they wanted to release it. So I was like, okay. And they cleaned up the audio the best they could.
Oh, that's so cool.
I'm proud of it because it's my firstborn doc. But
Yeah.
this apples and oranges with Before the End. I mean, this is a completely different budget and stepping it up in terms of gear and production values and everything. It's like night and day. Um, but with both of those, I just did it. I just dove in and did it. I guess like Tarantino, how he just dove in and he didn't really go to film school. He was working in a video store, and he was just a fanatic about film. And not to put myself in his category, he doesn't make docs.
Yeah.
Um,
It's just that spirit there, just
yeah,
taking that first step and figuring it out as you're doing it type of thing.
yeah, I think he was brilliant. He obviously had it all there. You don't
Yeah.
need some people need a formal education, some people don't, and teach their own. But if I were talking to young would-be filmmakers who wanted to make a doc, my advice is, do your research and dive in and know that you're going to make mistakes, and that's okay. That's what we do in life. That's how we
Yeah.
learn. And that, if you look hard and you're patient, you can find the silver lining in every mistake you make, and you can learn from it.
Yeah, well said. And as you're learning, you go on this big adventure as well. It's fucking sick.
Yeah. Oh, and yeah. Get ready, man, because you
Yeah.
have no idea. The next thing you know, you're going to spend 12 fucking years.
Yeah. And also, yeah, just I guess as the last question as we wrap things up, this is for all the people who have seen this doc, but do you still speak to Frank?
Your timing is impeccable, Sean, because he called me yesterday, right
Ooh,
around, yeah, right around this time yesterday, he called. And we've been in touch all along. Uh,
amazing.
known him, we will have known each other for 8 years this coming May of 2025. So, yeah, I'm
Okay.
grateful to still be in touch with him. He's still sharp as a tack. He's fascinating. He's hilarious. He's such a warm heart. and he is an absolute scamp.
Yeah, that's so cool.
Amazing person. I'll leave it
Yeah.
at
Yeah, that's awesome. So maybe possibilities of a season 2, but time
that.
might tell, I guess.
People ask me that, and I don't know if that'll happen. I don't know if I could do another 12 years.
Oh yeah.
But there is talk of a limited edition DVD box set, which would function as the director's cut, as it were, to because I shot miles and miles of footage and 130 interviews on camera, and of those 130 interviews, I think 60 or 70 made the cut.
Mhm.
So there's all the other stuff, and they're all amazing. I just couldn't get it, logistically, I couldn't get it all in there, or it would have been like a 20-part, a 20-part doc.
Yeah,
You know,
definitely.
so
But
we'll see how that shakes out.
yeah, but man, bravo on all your amazing work over a decade. It's coming out on January 13th, and we're definitely going to share the shit out of it. But Jeff, I could have talked to you for like another 5 hours. Thank
Oh
you
man,
so much for your time, man. I hope you have a great day.
thank you, Sean. It was a pleasure to meet you, and thanks for having me on today.
Hope you enjoyed that episode with director Jeff Finn. Before the End, Searching for Jim Morrison is available on all digital platforms from Amazon Prime, Apple TV, Google Play, YouTube TV, and TVO Digital. Can't recommend it enough. This film is definitely going to take you on a ride, and it was an absolute pleasure to watch it and pick his brain a little bit more. And also, I kind of geeked out around that last question about his new friend Frank. And if you know, you know. And if not, watch it and you will know. This is such a good episode to kick off the year. I'm feeling good. Like I mentioned in the intro too, we tried this new stuff, Magic Mind. And guys, I'm not going to lie, when they hit me up about that, I was a little skeptical. I seen some testimonials from comedians I liked and other podcasters taking it and reacting. I'm like, are they acting? Are they overreacting? And I tried it for myself, and damn, this is going to be my standard little ritual before every interview I do. If you're looking for a cognitive boost and also a feeling of calm energy, go check out magicmind.com. And also, you can get 45% off your purchase in January on us if you go to magicmind.com/the creative imbalance JAN. That's magicmind.com/creative imbalance Jan, as Jan for January. We'll have the link in the description. On their website, you can see all the ingredients. It comes in this green color. I feel like this is like the potion Link drinks in the Legend of Zelda, and he just like gets like that boost, you know? And speaking of other things that give me a boost, not only financially, but in my soul, we can't run away without thanking all you legends on the Patreon page. And first up, the biggest thanks to the Queen, Ola Mazuka of the Sonic Fold podcast. And another thanks to the lovely Amanda McKnight, which I recommend checking out Amanda McKnight's work on YouTube, Twitch, all that. Search VampX13 or Amanda McKnight and soak in some good vibes. Celebrate movies, video games, comic books, and all things nerdy. That's Amanda McKnight on YouTube. And another big thanks to the wonderful Jenny Potter, the legend Devin McBride, back-to-back double impact Allens, the #1 gent Alan Kent, and bigwig Alan Briggs, and last but not least, Francis Coffer, aka my mom, if you want to shout out at the end of every episode. And also get these episodes early, raw, uncut, right when I'm done the Zoom call. I just post them. You can go to patreon.com/the creative imbalance. And beyond having my forever thanks, you can just go to bed at night and sleep soundly, knowing you're a badass motherfucker who supports raw, uncut, independent media. And nobody can take that away from you. You hear me? We got more episodes around the corner. Actually going to post another one in a couple days. So thanks for rocking with me. Check out Before the End, and we'll catch you next time. Yeah.